Hello, my name is Travis Ryans. I'm an assistant director in the film and television industry, and I also co-host a podcast called Rainbow Road, where we examine the queerness of video games. If you'd like to check us out, we're available on Apple, Spotify, and all other major podcasting platforms. If you like silly jokes about gamers with a hard Y, you can follow us on Twitter at Rainbow Road Pod. Today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about an underappreciated gem that means a lot to me. The year is 2009, and I had spent the past few years excitedly waiting for the next game after Kingdom Hearts 2, which was sure to be Kingdom Hearts 3. It was a simpler time. Series creator Tetsuya Nomura has become a little infamous for his bizarre titles, but this one actually has some consistency to it. Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2. The game explores the backstory of a character named Roxas, who lives for exactly 1 year. The final week of his life is covered in Kingdom Hearts 2, so this game focuses on the previous 358 days, as well as that of his best friend h.a.n.d. So that's 358 days over the lives of two people. For simplicity, I'm just going to call it days from now on, if that's all right with you. I want to talk about this game because it's honestly the first game to make me cry. I'm not trying to put on any kind of masculine front here. I'm an emotional person. Good storytelling affects me deeply. It's part of the reason I'm so passionate about working in film and television. And video games had certainly gotten me emotional before, but they've never managed to pull an actual tear from me before this game. You might not have played it, and that's fine. It's a little hard to do these days because even Square acknowledged how unpopular this game was and didn't attempt to remaster it for their collections. They did give us some beautifully rendered cutscenes that you may have watched, but even those still can't do justice to the 20-hour runtime of the original. So I'm going to do my best to give you a rapid-fire plot synopsis of the game so you can appreciate what I'm talking about. There are 3 other games that are set during this game's year-long story, so I'm going to be glossing over a lot of details here. In this game's universe, your soul is referred to as your heart. When a heart becomes consumed by negative emotions like anger and despair, it will leave the body and morph into an evil monster known as a heartless, which is an oxymoron, but let's keep going. The body left without a soul becomes a nobody with a capital N. Again, another misnomer, but stay with me here. Nobodies are thought to be amoral and unfeeling without a heart to guide them. The game begins when the protagonist for the rest of the series, a boy named Sora, loses his heart, and a nobody named Roxas is formed, who has no memories of his former self. There is a cult of manipulative nobodies known as Organization XIII who have been trying to control Sora, believing he has a special power to steal the hearts of others that they could use to build ones of their own. The organization takes Roxas in and, in true cult fashion, tells him that he is worthless and has no right to exist. But if he's a good boy and does exactly as the organization tells him to, they will be able to make hearts for all of them. Believing he is doing the right thing, Roxas follows the organization's orders, but they still have a backup plan. Fearing that Roxas will one day betray them or rejoin Sora, they decide to build what is essentially a lifelike robot to absorb the life force of Roxas and Sora. Using some magic I won't bother confusing you with, they build this robot out of Sora's memories and name her h.a.n.d. Once activated, this girl retains none of Sora's memories or even her own true purpose. Roxas and h.a.n.d. become close, and being totally naive and innocent creatures, must have the concept of friendship explained to them by another organization member named Axel, who becomes fond of them. Not knowing how to distill the abstract concept of friendship, he blurts out an example like, sharing ice cream together. And they decide to do just that. It becomes a ritual for the 3 of them to meet up after work, sit on the edge of a clock tower, and eat ice cream together while watching the sunset. Things start to fall apart as h.a.n.d. begins to learn of her true purpose and that Axel has known this whole time. Axel does everything in his power to keep the other 2 in the dark, constantly hoping to squeeze out just a few more days together with his friends before it all comes to an end. h.a.n.d. and Axel come to blows while Roxas helplessly watches from the sidelines, not understanding why they're even fighting, and both of them too afraid to tell him the truth, that either Roxas or h.a.n.d. will have to die so that the other may live. Eventually, h.a.n.d. decides that she can't be responsible for Roxas' suffering, and decides to give up her life for his. The rules of the magic in this world mean 2 very tragic things. The first is that in order for Roxas to regain his power, he will need to take h.a.n.d.'s life himself. Knowing he would never do this willingly, h.a.n.d. disguises herself as a monster and attacks Roxas. Secondly, since h.a.n.d. was built out of memories, if she is destroyed, so too will any memories of her. Once defeated, she collapses into Roxas's arms with no disguise. The game ends as Roxas cradles his dying best friend, not understanding why she would want him to kill her. He's struggling to remember who she even is, and all he knows is that she's the most important thing in the world to him, and she's slipping away. He painfully says, "H.a.n.d, please don't go. Who will I have ice cream with?" This line has become something of an internet meme for bad writing, but in context, it hits like a train. Roxas is so sheltered and naive and has been so manipulated by these sociopaths that he's just not capable of processing and expressing his own emotions. He just knows that their time together has been special, and it's not just that he's losing his best friend, he won't even get to hold on to the memories of her. This game is special, both as a standalone game, but also for its place within the Kingdom Hearts series. Every other game has been this sweeping epic of light versus darkness and trying to save the universe from total doom. Days pushes all that grandiosity to the background and just focuses on the simple relationship between three people over the course of a year. It's this fascinating celebration of the mundane. You start each day walking into an employee lounge and checking a Bristol board before you teleport off to a Disney movie to fight some monsters. You get to see the inner lives of these sociopathic villains whose ultimate goal is to steal the souls of all living things as they gather around the water cooler and go, "Mondays, am I right?" There are around 9 games in this series that, is all about the true power of friendship, but this is the only one of those games that actually explores the question of what is friendship. This game is also tragic. Anyone who has played the previous games in the series knows that Roxas and Axel's friendship will eventually fall apart, that Roxas will give up his own life to return to Sora, and that H.a.n.d doesn't even exist in the other games, so something will happen to her. I streamlined the story to make it faster, but none of the origins or destinies are told to you up front, and each new piece of the puzzle instills more dread and despair. Axel's arc is tragic because he knows the futility of becoming friends with Roxas and H.a.n.d and chooses to do so anyways, knowing the pain it will cause him. We watch him struggle to keep them both from finding out and trying to extend whatever time he can with them. H.a.n.d's arc is tragic because none of this was her choice or desire, but she still accepts that her existence isn't worth the pain it will cause others. Roxas's arc is tragic because no one will tell him the truth, not even H.a.n.d, and he can't make any choices for himself. He must simply pay the price for everyone else's actions. This game does give us a fun chance to explore the personalities of all the organization members who only appear as boss fights in the other games, with brief cameos to set them up. There's a great irony of Marluxia explaining to Roxas the importance of the Keyblade to the organization when we know he will spend an entire other game using that information to betray the organization. Vexen, who is so obsessed with his research, is the one to teach us how to study the worlds we visit. If you're playing the mission mode in the game, these vibrant characters don't even have to be teammates, you can play as them. It is endlessly fun to play as Zexion and whip out a book bigger than War and Peace to just smack down some Heartless. I get to live out my fantasies as gay icon Marluxia and show off my flower power. And lastly, speaking of these characters, I don't want to spoil the secret ending of Kingdom Hearts 3, but if you know which character I'm talking about, you might want to go back and give his scenes a watch because they are fascinating with what we know now. The gameplay is admittedly not its strong point, but there are some really cool ideas in there. The way you build your RPG skills is to slide all of your abilities, magic, and even earned levels into slots on a Tetris board. It's kind of like that case in Resident Evil 4. Putting certain pieces into certain shapes gives you bonuses, and it's a fun puzzle trying to maximize your build. What's more, since the game is designed around specific missions, you can rebuild your character every single time to fit the mission you're going on. That kind of flexibility and customization on the fly has just never been seen in the series before or since. Even the magic is unique, as each upgrade for your magic makes it behave differently. Is it worth upgrading your fire spell, knowing that it will no longer home in on your target? Are you prioritizing damage output or consistency? It even brings in a limit break mechanic where you can gain powerful new attacks when you're at low health. Is it worth healing up if you can just wreak havoc instead? Maybe I should just deliberately take damage to get to that point. The risk-reward element is fascinating. You can team up with friends online as you play the different organization members and create new barriers or challenges to each other using the endless customization. You can do a level 1 only run for a certain mission. You can do a magic run, a no weapons run, all kinds of things. I'll be the first to admit that the missions in the main story can get a little dull and repetitive as the game progresses, but I think it actually ends up reinforcing the narrative of the game. Like, I'm sure they didn't set out to make a boring game, but all the same, it creates this feeling of monotonous work that Roxas goes through every day. He has no motivation to do these things, but he has to, and both of you are just working for the weekend, waiting until your shift is over so you can spend some time with your friends. They even do a great job of shaking up the gameplay to fit the narrative. When h.a.n.d loses control of her Keyblade and Roxas lends her his, you as the player have to roll with it. You have to learn how to survive without it. When h.a.n.d begins to siphon away Roxas's power, you lose some of those RPG slots I mentioned and have to make sure you're prioritizing properly. Days isn't perfect, and I'm not here to say it got robbed for Game of the Year or anything like that, but if you've only seen people making fun of the ice cream scene online or the cutscenes in the collection feel a little off to you, I hope this has given you some insight into why this game means so much to some of us. Most people don't have a DS anymore, and copies of the game are only going to get rarer as time goes on. The game's place in history is oddly fitting. It was a brief moment of time that couldn't last forever and is something special because of it. Much like Roxas, my memory of that time isn't perfect and is probably only going to get worse as time goes on. But I also know how that game makes me feel, and that's what's important. I'll never forget how this game made me feel, and I'll carry it with me always. So, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go have some ice cream and watch the sunset with someone who is very special to me. And I hope you do that too. Thanks again for listening. My name is Travis Ryans, and you can find Rainbow Road on Twitter at Rainbow Road Pod. That's Rainbow Road Pod. Happy gaming!